Okay, so before I talk about who feels regret, I'm first of all going to talk about what I see non-duality as, and just direct pointing to non-duality. I was watching a video the other day of this therapist that said that a healthy mind or a healthy person, somebody that's healthy in relationships and healthy in their life, is somebody with a very flexible mind. And I thought that was like a really nice way to describe mental health, that your mind is flexible, so things happen and the mind is able to see it in a flexible manner. So say if somebody like runs over your cat, which is like a difficult, painful scenario, your mind is flexible enough not to just hate that person and blame that person. It's got the possibility to look at it from different angles and to not get stuck on an idea like that person is a bad person, that person has no compassion. Or even if there's like a murderer, somebody that murders your child, even though you're not greatly hurt and devastated by that, there's an ability to look at it from different angles, to imagine what the motives of the other person could be, to question their state, their mentality, their upbringing, their perspective on life. So not just looking at it like that person is bad and evil, like looking at it from multiple angles. So my understanding of jnana yoga, which I presume is where non-duality sort of came from, even though it was in lots of different editions, but jnana yoga, to me, is the acrobatics of the mind. So rather than the acrobatics of the body, it's the acrobatics of the mind. And non-duality, to me, is a questioning your beliefs and questioning your ideas to a point where you begin to go beyond ideas. When I was younger, I used to think that the world only exists, that other people only exist because I thought. I thought my thinking and consciousness were one and the same thing. That I was conscious, I was alive, and that consciousness thought. So my consciousness, my soul thought, and it made choices. And without thinking, I wouldn't be able to be aware. I wouldn't perceive anything. I would most probably be dead. I thought that thinking was part of my soul, was part of who I was, my intrinsic way of being, like me. And I didn't know what I thought animals were, but I certainly thought that thinking and me was the same thing. Even though when I was born, I didn't think at a very young age, I still thought that me and thinking, they belong together. But then through process of exploration and exploring what it is to be alive, what my consciousness is, what life is, consciousness separated from thinking and consciousness separated from the body-mind mechanism. And there was a seeing that consciousness was prior to thinking and wasn't contained in thinking. So I wasn't conscious. I was arising in consciousness. And that might not sound much to people. Like even when I had that said to me when I was younger, I was like, that doesn't even really make sense. I'm just not interested in that. I didn't really realize the profundity of it until there was a deep going into it, and there was that separation between thinking and consciousness. So my perception of events weren't the same as the Lisa character, as me. And the consciousness separated from everything. So it separated from my ideas, my memories, my belief systems, my body, my age, my actions, my job. So it was like, before I thought that I was a playwright or I had a job. Whereas when the consciousness separated, that was something that arose in consciousness, but was no longer the consciousness that was experiencing. Consciousness was prior to all thought, all action or behavior. Everything was prior to it. And that made a fundamental shift to my body mind. And this isn't just me that's saying this. This is a whole tradition that's saying this. Like that when that separates, which it doesn't really separate also, which is another mind acrobatic, but when it separates, there is a freedom that comes about in the person, because who you are is no longer a thing that needs to be defended. There needs to be something. Who you are is a consciousness, which is not a thing. So it's not something you can ever find. So it's not a thing, and it's simultaneously all things. So consciousness, like pure consciousness, is not separate from anything that is perceived. There is never outside of perception. There is never consciousness stopping here and then the world. How would that work? Like, how would consciousness stop here? How would you be conscious of everything else? If consciousness stops somewhere, how would you be conscious of the window over there, or the computer, or the voice box? That the need that everything is appearing in and as consciousness. Like consciousness doesn't stop. It doesn't start somewhere as well. It's this phenomena which is like a magical, crazy, divine appearance that is all things and no thing, and every single being has consciousness. Every single being. Every single thing as well. So, and there's also one more part to it as well. So Nisargadatta Maharaj, who, because I'm studying him in book clubs at the moment, it's like infiltrating my brain at the moment. I don't know if you know Nisargadatta. He would say that the consciousness isn't the end. He would say that it's actually pure being. But I see them as one and the same thing. They're also the same. Like aliveness, this pure being. Yeah. So then, if the experiencer isn't a thought, isn't an idea, isn't a person, then who is it that feels regret? So I was motivated by this title because in one of the talks that I gave this week, one of the participants was struggling with regret. So regretting things they had done in their life. And decisions and choices they made. And they were asking me from a non-dual perspective how to deal with that. So there's a difference between therapy and non-duality, and I'm not saying don't do therapy. If you are having lots of regret and shame and you want to explore that, then you can do in therapy. But from a non-duality perspective, who is it that feels regret? So in this very moment, who is it that feels regret? If you aren't the character, if you aren't the thoughts or the thinker, if you are pure consciousness, who is it that's feeling regret now in this moment? So if you are that which is perceiving, which does not move, which isn't a thought, that isn't time bound, that isn't an idea, that isn't something from the past, but just here, just now, this pure, alive awakeness, who is it in this moment that feels regret? And that's something that in non-duality, it's you have to question for yourself. I can't tell you the definitive answer. I can't tell you in the positive the answer. It's an investigation. In this moment, who are you to feel regret? Does consciousness, that which is experiencing your true nature, feel regret in this moment? Is there something that is without regret, that is experiencing prior to the character? So regret, you could say, is an imagination. It's not actually something that exists now. An imagination that belongs to somebody, that's imagining their past and what they could have done different to have a different moment now. And the strong belief there is that if I have done something different, I would be more happy now. So in some way, I have failed. And if I hadn't failed, I would be more happy now. There can also be a practical, not regret, but practical analysis which stops you, which moves the body in a different direction so it doesn't keep repeating mistakes. Like our mind is a very useful tool. But there is also this person that believes that they would be more happy now if they had made different choices. And is that true? So in non-duality, they would say that consciousness is all that you've ever looked for. So what you've wanted is consciousness, not the outcome of events. So not different events. And that includes everything. Like, this is not a simple story. It includes everything, because difficult things are going to happen in life to everybody. Everyone's going to experience death. Everybody's going to experience money issues. Well, maybe some people don't experience money issues, but maybe they do, because even if you have money, you've got to keep it. So I think everybody has money issues. Everyone's going to have pain and pleasure, good times and bad times. But is there another possibility? Is there something in you which can always be at home with the ebb and flow of life, with birth and death, with growth and destruction, with all the change that happens in this life? Most people in our society are always trying to keep good, keep pleasure, happiness, happiness. Like, we hide death. Death is out. We don't want to see it. We pay people to kill our animals. We keep it out. We don't want to see death. We're always trying to stay more on the pleasure. Is there the possibility that in all the ups and downs of life, with the idea and the knowing that everybody is going to die and experience that people dying and pain and tragedy, is there something else in the experience which is free and at peace? So non-duality would say that is consciousness, that is perception, that is prior to the pain and pleasure, that is prior to the one that thinks, the one that does, or the one that experiences pain from life, from the effects of life. So is consciousness affected by things that happen in life? And if not, that profoundly will change your relationship to regret. If you realize that there's something that is free here prior to you. When you really accept that life is never going to be this perfect running through poppies, it's not going to work out for anybody, everybody's got to die, and there is an acceptance of that, then there's the openness to looking beyond what happens in life for your happiness. Is there something else than things that can give me happiness or peace of mind, as Roger Castillo would say? Peace of mind. So regret heavily, and shame heavily, relies on the idea that things, scenarios, and situations will solve your life. If I move to a different country, if I get more money, if I stop stress, all of these things are going to make difference to pain and pleasure, but you're never going to find the peace that you look for, because you're never going to be able to keep things stable. They keep changing. Everything is in entropy. Everything is changing. You can't keep it still. You can't hold on to it and make it like, okay, this body is going to stay young. This body is going to, face is going to stay upwards. No, oh, it keeps sagging down. Okay, up we go. Never going to work. We'll keep the teeth in. Yeah. So what I love about non-duality is that consciousness is not something you have to get from God. It's not something that you have to pay for. It is here. Who is it that's looking now? Who is it that's experiencing? So you can look at look at remorse or regret with a therapist. You can work through it on the intellectual level, on the somatic level. But then from a non-duality perspective, who experiences regret? And is it true that if you'd played things differently, your life now would be better? How do you know that? And who would it be better for? And would you be able to keep the better? So if you got more money or bigger house, or you made amends for your mistakes of when you've hurt people, or you didn't date this person, or you didn't get abused by this person, if you'd done all of that, what would would you be able to keep or stop it happening now? There can be some lives that are more fortunate. But what I really love about TV and all the access to books now and stories is, if you read a lot of stories, mostly biographies, you realize that it's never greener on the other side. like greener grass on the other side. Like everybody has their karma or their dynamics, everybody. And some people it's more fortunate and some people less, but often it's not fortunate like we imagine. So it's the same for shame. Who is ashamed now? We have shame, which helps guide us in a positive way. And then we have this other shame, which is the mental repetition that is a lie. So we have shame that helps guide us to live better with our neighbors, with our loved ones. And then we've got a mental shame which cripples us. Who is it that feels shame? And is it true, anything that's saying? And what is at peace now? Making life different, thinking these shameful thoughts, stopping something, being different, or the consciousness which is perceiving. And this really has to be a self-investigation, because I can't convince you that consciousness is peace. I can maybe give you like little tastes or snippets of it. You have to go in to find it yourself, to realize that everything has a place of peace in it. Everything. So in India, they call it Satchitananda. I don't know if you know these words. It's when consciousness and beingness meet. So being, aliveness, presence, and consciousness. So obviously they're always meeting in a way because they're right here. But normally they're going through a filter of a dream of thoughts. So when there is a collapsing of that identification with thoughts and a moving back to consciousness and the beingness, and they meet, then there is bliss, ananda. But bliss isn't a permanent thing. Bliss comes and goes like everything else. There is this sense of bliss, this sense of peace in everything when they meet. That's so beautiful. Consciousness meets beingness. It doesn't really meet like these little words we can break down in the end, but it's a pointing to something. When consciousness is present, when you are present, when there is presence here, right now, in this, then bliss or peace. People translate it slightly differently. And that's the effect in the human body.